Charles has been taking shots at me for, seriously, 20 years. I never care about anybody taking shots at me unless that somebody repeatedly says on national TV,
if I get a disease and I'm going to die, how about get Skip Bayless in here and I kill him live on national television?
Don't pay any attention to this clown. Nobody takes him seriously. They just laugh at him, not with him.
I very seldom have went out to report. I go out to Skip Bayless because I don't like him at all. And I just like with him because he's so sensitive. And
he likes to F with me because I'm so sensitive. I waited 20 years to finally stand up and call him out for saying very publicly again and again and again that he'd like to kill me. I waited 20 years to do that, and now I'm so sensitive. I am still laughing about that one. Not with Charles, but at Charles.
The Skip Bayless-Charles Barkley feud rages on.
And Skip, to me, these guys are real people. And I don't mind you criticizing guys. Right. It can never be personal.
Right. That's it.
And one thing I hate about the media, you can tell guys they like and dislike. You can't talk about people on television like that.
With Barkley bringing up fair points.
You can tell who he likes. You can tell who he dislikes because he makes it personal.
All I know for sure is that Charles does watch Undisputed religiously.
And Bayless responding with, "See, you love me. I'm your guilty pleasure," nonsense. One more snippet of Bayless, which just reeks of hypocrisy.
My theory is that deep down, Charles resents me because I all too often see and say things that he wishes he had seen and said.
Now let's get back to February when Bayless said this.
And I must admit, I do love Charles on TV. I'm a big fan of Charles Barkley, the commentator on Inside the NBA. But Charles, as you know, has come to the point he can get away with saying just about anything that pops into his head and out of his mouth. That's just Charles being Charles. I envy that. I'm the polar opposite of that.
Do I think Skip Bayless is playing this up a little bit? Yes, of course I do. Is he one for the theatrics? Well, why don't y'all go back and look over his career in media? That is undoubtedly, unquestionably, unequivocally a yes. Now, when it comes to him and Charles, he says he has invited Charles on his podcast before, though, to my understanding, he has never had a guest on his podcast previously. So it would be a first. Usually he just sits there. He has a pre-prepared statement, notes that he wants to read. He does that, and then he gets out. He says that he worried for his safety because Charles Barkley would threaten his life. That could very well be. I don't want to downplay that. I think anybody doing that to another person is terrible. It is coming from Charles Barkley, who is the ultimate prankster and jokester, not saying that it isn't warranting of some criticisms and rebukings, but we know what Charles is and who Charles is at this point. He also, through his own words, really enjoys poking Skip Bayless because Skip has shown that it gets to him. And Charles knew that it got to him. I'm sure that Charles probably was given some sort of information behind the scenes that Skip kept talking about him. But even if he didn't get any of that intel, Skip has set himself up to be critiqued like this over and over again. You know why? Because everyone knows he's full of it. A lot of people didn't really think that he believed Johnny Manziel would have a better career than LeBron James in Cleveland. It's stupid. It's dumb. That is a dumb sports take. If someone called in to a local Cleveland sports radio show and said, "Yeah, I think that Manziel kid is going to have a better career than LeBron," they would get hung up on and then crapped on throughout the hour on that radio show. Just think about it. If it didn't come from Skip, this is a great game. If it didn't come from Skip Bayless's mouth and it came from a random sports radio caller or a sports commentator, a sports fan who comments on like YouTube videos or lives or stuff like that, you would think it's preposterous. But because this man gets paid millions of dollars, I think he's on a 4-year, $32 million contract, $8 million a year at Fox Sports 1. If it wasn't him and it was a random sports radio caller, you would think it is foolish to say something like that. The Tebow hype, like the way that Skip Bayless treated LeBron James throughout his career. There were times to be critical, but the overboardness with which he went. Part of what Charles said, which is a must watch, All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Captain Jack, Steven Jackson, a lot of what he said is true. It is true. So Skip playing this up now, I think what he is doing after seeing his co-host eventually depart, he is going to, some say, be on a sinking ship. How do you then rise the tide? You poke a few bears here and there and keep your name relevant. And that is exactly what he's doing with Charles Barkley.